Hello, welcome to Eric Redmond's Fireside Chat for Legislative Week, February 9th to the 13th. Friends and neighbors, thank you for your correspondence. I do read your emails, I do research and consider what you write. Many of you are very passionate in your message to me. You've elected me to represent you, and a very important element in that representation is I follow the Idaho State Constitution, which one important article requires our state to balance its budget. Unlike the feds who are now 18 trillion debt, our state and its citizens have many needs, but still the majority of Idahoans don't want more government or taxes. Therefore, I must keep that in perspective when I read you just two of my more passionate emails received on just one subject. In addition, this happens to be a subject of which I am not even on the committee where policy and bills originate from. Now, if those bills get to the House, then I do have an opportunity to vote there. Here's one such email. Dear Legislator, I am currently a second grade teacher in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I am writing to let you know what life is like for me as a teacher and hopefully give some insight as to how past and current legislation has impacted my family, my students, and myself. I've been teaching in Idaho for 10 years, 8 of which have been in Coeur d'Alene School District. Out of the 8 years I have been teaching, I've been nominated as Rookie of the Year twice and Teacher of the Year twice. I average about 55 to 60 hours per week toward planning and communication instruction. Last year I received my first raise and grossed $37,299.97. I have a mortgage, a spouse who is also a teacher, and 3 children, one of whom is attending University of Idaho. My other 2 children are in high school and will graduate next year and the year after. This means that I'll have 3 children in college all at once. Financially, it has always been a bit tight for us, but neither my husband nor I went into education for the money and know how to live within our means. I need to make clear that this letter is not intended to be an appeal for a higher salary for educators. Rather, it is an appeal for better working conditions for myself and learning conditions for students whom I care about deeply. I have 27 children in my class. I work in a Title I school, which means that the income of the majority of families that we serve is within the poverty range. 4 of my students have IEPs for learning disabilities. 8 of my students are medicated for attention issues. 8 of my students have parents who have served jail time during their upbringing or currently serving mostly for drug-related crimes. 2/3 of my students do not have parents who are still married. Some of their parents never were married. 9 of my students did not go to our school last year. We have a large transient population. 3 of my students have been homeless at some point this year. I have reported 2 instances of suspected child abuse this school year. I have had 2 instances where students in my class have had to flee their homes because of domestic violence. 3 of my students are being raised by other relatives because their parents are not financial enough to raise them. At the beginning of this school year, exactly half of my class was below proficiency on the Idaho Reader Indicator. According to current data, about 58% of my students are considered proficient as of January. If we look at growth, my students have averaged about 28 points growth as a whole. Those who do not understand how those growth points work may not be terribly impressed by that, but I celebrate that achievement. Those who do not understand may look at a 58% proficiency rate and judge me as a less than adequate teacher. I assure you that my practices and efforts are tireless. I ask that we consider the many factors that are out of a teacher's ability to influence when we consider pay for performance on test scores. The ads that implore the public don't fail Idaho and the ratings in publications in which Idaho plummets to the bottom are discouraging at best and absolutely demoralizing on the extremely challenging days. When I hear banter and conversation about getting rid of bad teachers, I think, well, yes, but what about me? In our efforts to weed out the tears, are you trying to get rid of me? Are we trying to create an atmosphere that is so antagonistic against teachers that we are losing those that we should value the most? That is what the legislative sieve is doing. The holes in layperson's philosophies about what constitutes a good education are so big that even the good teachers, which are surely the majority, are having to hold on for dear life to get washed out in legislative efforts to get rid of the bad teachers. If you wash us out, who will fight the fight for these children? Who will advocate for the children of poverty and abuse? No one will want them because the scores that they generate will not promote teaching them as a good career choice for someone who wants to be perceived as a good teacher. Dear Ledger, I ask you to consider what you're doing to preserve us, the good teachers of Idaho. What are you doing to celebrate the teachers that stick with and advocate for the teachers that are not a good career gamble? What are you doing to provide support for educating kids that are difficult to educate? What are you doing to encourage teachers who love them enough to climb with them that sometimes daunting mountain? Please, I implore you, invest in us. I love what I do and I love my 27 reasons for doing it. They are worth every effort I put forth, and they are worth every cent you could impart. Thank you for your time and consideration. Now, on the other hand, there's a House bill has to do with repealing the SBAC, or at least allowing parents not to take the SBAC part of the Idaho Core. This came from another constituent. I understand that HB 65 is stalled in the Ways and Means Committee. There's no reason for this delay other than personal agenda and the improper use of power on the part of a few in the House. Daniel Webster famously stated, "It's hardly too strong to say that the Constitution was made to guard the people against the dangers of good intentions." There are men in all ages who mean to govern well, but they mean to govern. They promise to be good masters, but they mean to be masters. The delay of HB 65 is a shining example of the dangers that Webster spoke of. The people of Idaho have spoken. Common Core is unwanted and unacceptable. I ask you now to please listen to the people and demand the release of HB 65 from committee. At the heart of our founding documents is the notion of natural rights. These include the absolute right to manage our lives, our property, and our faith as we choose. These rights do not require the permission of the blessing of the king. I am a father. My natural rights dictate that I rear and educate my posterity in accordance with my best judgment, my conscience, and my faith. I am writing you to encourage you to do your duty and call upon certain representatives to immediately release HB 65 from committee. Please don't lose sight of the real and crushing effects of federal intrusion. Well, that's just some of the emails. Monday, I introduced to the whole House a pharmacy bill that was actually created by the Idaho Board of Pharmacy and came through the Health and Welfare Committee that I am on. In Idaho, attorneys are allowed to subpoena records. They quite often go on a fishing subpoena in a civil child support or divorce case to get dirt on the plaintiff by finding out what kind of prescription drugs are taken. 99% of the time, the board refuses to release that private personal medical records. Recently, the refusal to release was appealed to a district court judge who reprimanded the attorney for doing it. This bill just stated an attorney would have to convince a judge to agree to subpoena the prescription drug records of the plaintiff in any case, so that there is truly a legitimate reason to release that private information. The House passed that bill that I brought before the House at a unanimous vote. Some of the out-of-the-box special meetings this last week include a few of us on the House Health and Welfare Committee met with Director Armstrong and the administrators involved with Optum from the H&W, Health and Welfare, along with the executive officer of Optum. Optum is a contractor company that oversees Medicaid behavior, health, mental illness patient treatment, and the provider's payments for the same. The week before, there was a 2-hour public hearing with both the Senate and House Health and Welfare Committees for patients and providers about the mental health treatments and payments for treatments. Optum's denial of services is common and the appeals process arduous for families and agencies. Payment inconsistencies with other provider burdens are decreasing the number of providers, which will impact coverage. A depressing fact,